Welcome back. Well, today I am joined by our Director of Security, Carlos Rojas. Carlos, welcome. How are you doing?
Good morning. Very good. How about yourself?
Excellent, excellent. I appreciate you taking the time today. So there's been a lot going on. I mean, we've been at stay-at-home orders for quite some time. I know we had you back on a few months ago, but a lot of things have changed. We've started to, go back out and things like that. But I understand there are still some internet scams that we should be aware of. What are some things that you want to tell us about?
Yes, absolutely. So we know with folks being at home a lot more often due to the pandemic, a lot more people are on the internet. And as they maneuver or surf on the internet, oftentimes that makes them more prone to being victims of internet scams. So we really want folks to be wary and be aware of the various scams that are taking place. And some of the basic tips just really come down to common sense approach to being on the internet. So if you have somebody asking for personal information, such as social security, driver's license, date of birth, automatically that should be a red flag and you should be wary of that. Or somebody asking you for money as well. And then one of the popular scams that's going on right now is actually on dating sites. And so when folks go onto dating sites, which is a lot more common in this day and age, oftentimes they're befriended and there's a relationship that is pursued by an individual that you may have never met. And oftentimes the request for money to be sent is made, and that again should be a red flag. And we just really caution everybody to be wary of not only dating websites, but anytime somebody's asking you to write a check or to provide funding to somebody.
And there's been some discussion about the dating apps and how people, like you said, are befriended, and it could be months before they ever ask you for money. So it is frightening that people are getting sucked into that kind of stuff. And I know we have people in our community who date. So yeah, it's very scary. So thanks for the reminder on that. If they do run into those kinds of things, who should they contact?
Well, of course, at the security department, we want to be made aware of it. And then they can always contact the Orange County Sheriffs as well. And between both agencies, we'll be able to make a determination if it's a criminal act that has occurred, and the Sheriff's Department would look into that. And if it's something that security can follow up on, of course, we would also investigate that side of it.
Okay, great. Good information. Of course, now things are starting to heat up this weekend. Or this week and the next weekend, they are really going to be a little warmer than usual. So we've got people who want to barbecue, but there are some dangers with that. So what are some things you want people to be aware of?
Yes, so every year as summer comes along, we all want to get on that grill and start cooking up our hamburgers and hot dogs. And we encourage everybody to obviously enjoy themselves, enjoy the food that they're grilling. But there are some basic reminders as far as grilling. And some of those basic reminders are to keep the grill away from anything that may be combustible. Keep them away from the buildings, keep them away from a loose apron. Just some of the basic common sense approach to grilling is very, very helpful. And just make sure if you're not, if you don't know how to use the grill properly, all those grills come with a manufacturer's manual that will give you safety tips, and we encourage you to, as boring as they may be, just to open those up and read some of those safety reminders, because what we want to avoid here in the village is any type of fire situation.
Oh yeah, there is a manual. I always forgot about that. I had gotten a new barbecue and I didn't read it, unfortunately, and I burned a whole bunch of steaks the first couple times because I had it way too hot. So really good advice. What are some of the things that people have burnt in the past?
Well, we haven't had very many fires here in the village, but we've had some fires where the propane tank wasn't necessarily hooked up correctly, or it leaked. So number one, you want to make sure that any connections with a propane tank are secure, and then that you're there the whole time, and understand that even after you take your steaks or burgers off that grill is still hot and can still cause a fire. And so we haven't had any very serious fires this year. We have had some minor incidents that occurred. And of course, the Orange County Fire Authority responded very rapidly, and it didn't become a larger issue. But it's really our responsibility when we're grilling to make sure that we keep things safe.
Okay, perfect. Great advice. Another thing that's sort of come down the pike just recently is that there has been a new resolution for the village regarding mask usage or facial covering usage. Can you sort of clarify the resolution? I mean, it's a long one, but just kind of in a nutshell, clarify it. And then how will our security department actually do stuff about it?
Yeah, so emergency resolution was passed, and it's, of course, to try to control the spread of the pandemic with the COVID-19. That's really, throughout the world at this point in time, still awaiting for a vaccine. But, here in the village, we have over 12,000 residents, over 18,000 homes. We have a large area, but at the same time, we do have a lot of folks that can fall into that high risk group. And then there's a lot of activities where you do have closer contact in our community here than maybe you would have in other communities. So we're trying to take a very common sense, reasonable approach to wearing face coverings and just making sure that you're keeping yourself safe and also maximizing safety for others in the community as well. So the security department is really going to take a reasonable approach regarding the enforcement. As the emergency resolution was passed, it is very clear that it is a mandate to wear face coverings, but I think all residents should read the resolution very, very closely. There are some exceptions in regards to medical conditions, and we will follow the resolution as passed by the board, but we want to make people know, or we want to make sure people know that this isn't a situation where we're trying to be adversarial. This is about health safety and just trying to keep everybody safe.
Yeah, I know people probably, I'm sure there was a lot of dialogue regarding whether or not this was something they should be doing or not doing. And of course it is for the safety of everyone, and we are all in this together. But nonetheless, I'm sure people are like, oh my gosh, security is going to be looking out for people not wearing a mask. Obviously that is not your primary vision.
Correct. We're going to continue to operate the security department as we've had in the past in terms of trying to keep the community safe in regards to all aspects of our community. So the wearing of face coverings is just another component that we have to be aware of and then make sure that we follow through with the direction of the board.
Okay, well, perfect. Well, you guys are doing a great job. I know it may be a little less busy these days because people aren't really out and about driving their car that much, but nonetheless, you probably still are, doing your usual stuff, correct?
Correct. And with more people not being out and about, that's where, we go back to our initial conversation regarding the internet scam. So we are getting more phone calls regarding people being concerned that they may be a victim or a potential victim of a scam. So we are staying busier in some other areas that we weren't seeing as prevalent in the past.
So as you know, the community services building has, is completely shut down with the exception of a few employees. So have people called you saying, oh gosh, when's it going to open? Are they calling you? Are they calling resident services? Other than internet scams, what other kind of calls are you guys getting?
We are getting a lot of calls regarding, contractors and whether or not they can come into the community. And then so just common questions that you would expect under this new normal, if you will. People seeking clarity on what the rules are in regards to the pandemic and people coming into the community. And then that's why I go back to really encouraging all to read the resolution in detail, because that really does explain in very simple terms what is acceptable and what's not here in the village.
Exactly. And then one other thing I wanted to touch on, while it's not necessarily in our community, we do see it on television and it's all over the place about these protests. And I, not necessarily with face masks, but the other types of protests that are going on, I think it has people kind of afraid and a little scared that, okay, they're going to target certain areas that might be vulnerable. So what do you say to that? You guys obviously know what's going on and you're aware of it, but what would you say to our community about some of those protestings that are going on?
Well, I think the situation here in Laguna Woods Village is a very fortunate one for all the residents. They enjoy a very safe community with very robust amenities and a very robust capacity to keep the community safe. So unlike some of the protests which have been out in public areas and have caused challenges for law enforcement, fortunately enough, we have security mechanisms in place that really don't allow for that type of behavior to occur inside the village. And I'm not saying that it could never happen, but it would be very difficult. You know, we do have a very secure community with gates, with fencing, with security cameras, with security personnel. And I think all that contributes to the overall safety. And I don't believe that folks within the village, living within the village, should be concerned about those protests or any adverse effects from those protests inside the village property.
Excellent. Yeah, because, you know, some people are frightened and, you know, even though there's a gate, sometimes, oh, that's not a good, safe thing. But obviously it is. You've got people everywhere and you've got people protecting the vicinity. So perfect. Well, good. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to clarify the majority of those items I know people were thinking about. And of course, we will have you on again to talk more about what's coming down the pike.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, Carlos, have a great day.
All right. You too.
All right. And we'll be right back after this.